series. I don't actually know how long it is right now. I have 14 books in this series. I haven't read number 14 yet, so we don't need to bother with that one. There's also 2 books that complete the series, The Bestiary and The Witches,
So I did it! I read the bloody STARBLADE Chronicles! Now please leave me alone! So years and years ago, I made an entire video about the complete Wardestone Chronicles series by Joseph Delaney, and since then I've been overwhelmed still to this day with people commenting, telling me to read the STARBLADE Chronicles, which is the sequel to the Wardestone Chronicles, and I've been putting it off because I'm a lazy bitch. But I actually kicked my brain into gear and did it. So the STARBLADE Chronicles is the direct sequel series to the Wardestone Chronicles. And thankfully it's only 3 books long, unlike the Wardestone Chronicles, which is 13 books long. Insanity. I also would like to point out that once again I am reading these books in French, so terminology may differ. And before I go on, I would like to invite you all to subscribe to my channel where I talk about books and music and occasionally movies and other stuff.
Also, be warned, if you are a fan of this series, I'm about to rip it apart.
You can get your feelings hurt.
So the first book in this trilogy is A New Darkness. The book starts with Tom Ward, now the official spook of the county since John Gregory actually did kick the bucket finally at the end of the last series, investigating the murders of 3 young women who have all been sucked dry, and after having a conversation with one of the ghosts of these 3 women, she describes a creature that he has never ever heard of. But as readers, we recognise it as being a Kobolos, a new foe that was introduced during the Wardestone Chronicles, and it was foretold at the end of the series that there was going to be a war against them in this trilogy. On the journey home, Tom encounters a teenage girl called Jenny who begs him to take her on as his apprentice. So all the spooks are 7th sons of 7th sons, so only 7th sons of 7th sons can be spooks, but Jenny is the 7th daughter of a 7th daughter, and like they also have powers, but there's never been like a woman spook before. So Tom's like, no, I'm not taking you on as an apprentice because A, you're a girl, and B, this is a super dangerous job, you could die. So what, Tom's never gonna train new spooks? Because like, you really need them, Tom, you really need them. Your whole everything doesn't have enough spooks. Like, you need to train more. You would also think that they might want to diversify a bit, because the 7th son of a 7th son thing, not all 7th sons of 7th sons become spooks. So you're already like pulling from a pool that is extremely limited to do a job that is really necessary, because they have to basically destroy all the evil creatures and witches that harm people, and there's a lot of them. So yeah, get training apprentices as soon as possible, Tom, and stop being picky. He sends Jenny away, but she keeps coming back and being like, I'm the best, like you have to take me because like nobody does it better than me. She is really annoying, like really annoying. Also, this trope of like a girl coming in for a man's position and being like, I'm the best, I'm so much better than everybody else. Like, I haven't read that a million times. Like, for God's sakes, can we just drop this? Because all I want to see with characters like this is just them getting dragged. So like, immediately I'm like, Jenny is here to try and break Joseph Delaney's image of being super misogynistic as a writer by creating a female character that is just super annoying. I'm not here for it. I'm not. But Tom does eventually agree to maybe work with Jenny because she knows where the Kobolos that has been killing the girls is hiding. How does she know this? Get used to not having answers. So she takes him to this tree that's been hollowed out where the Kobolos has set up his home, and it's full of like artifacts and books and all the things that a Kobolos mage needs. They confront this creature, but he knocks out Tom, then he ties up Jenny and starts drinking her blood. And he is basically the same as the witches. Like, all of Joseph Delaney's witches, or like the evil ones, are like, oh, I'm gonna drink your blood, I'm gonna do terrible things to you because I'm so evil. Cliche. It gets old. It really does. I get showing evil characters doing terrible things to children to teach them about the horrible things in the world, but nobody in the world is going to come up to you and say, I'm evil, I'm going to do terrible things to you. Like, this is second grade YA, but his antagonists behave like 1970s bad movie evil guys who are like, I'm dressed in black so I'm the bad guy. It's not annoying at all. No. But moving on. Tom eventually escapes and runs back to the house at Chippenden, where he digs up John Gregory's grave because he buried the Starblade underneath it. So the Starblade was forged by Grimalkin at the end of the Wardestone Chronicles so that they could defeat the devil. But Tom Ward didn't want to use it for some reason. I don't understand why the spooks don't use swords. Because it seems like a way more obvious weapon. Like, they use sticks with like retractable blades. Like, this is the norm everybody does. It would make more sense if they all kind of had their preferred weapon. So, like, if John Gregory was a stick with retractable blade type of guy, fine. If, like, somebody else has, I don't know, an axe, or somebody else has a lance, or somebody else has a sword, like, it would make more sense. But no, they all have sticks with retractable blades, and I don't know why this is the preferred weapon of choice, but finally somebody figured out maybe using a sword might be the better option because gunpowder ain't a thing in this world. But Tom finds that his usual weapons, such as salt and his silver chain, don't work against the Kobolos, so you gotta step up your weapons game. So he defeats the Kobolos and frees Jenny. Then he starts taking her through training to become a spook, which involves going to the haunted house that he had to go to in book 1 of the Wardestone Chronicles, where he, like, the test was basically that he had to spend the night there with the ghosts and not run away in fear. So he leaves Jenny in the house, but when he comes back in the morning, she ran away. And her explanation for doing this, she has empathy and she could feel the ghost emotions. So the ghosts are this guy who killed his wife and buried her in the garden. And she's like, oh, but I could feel that he loved her. And she found that overwhelming. Like, what? If you murder your wife, I think that you probably don't love her. Like, murdering somebody is a way of controlling them. Like, murdering these types of abusive relationships, it is the ultimate control, to take someone's life away from them. People who do that is not an act of love. When I say Joseph Delaney is misogynistic, this is the type of thing I mean. And there's gonna be more stuff like this. So Jenny runs back to her adoptive parents' house, and Tom's like, you failed the test. And Jenny's like, maybe we should change things up a bit and, like, maybe not repeat the stupid stuff that John Gregory has been doing for decades. But Tom is like, no, we're going to do it exactly the way I did it, even though I hated it and thought it was a really bad idea. This is the way we've always done it, so I'm always going to do this way. Every time I come across something like this, it always reminds me of that scene in Laws and Ladies by Terry Pratchett, when the established witch Granny Weatherwax is confronting Diamanda, the new, young, untrained witch who is stupidly powerful. And she's going off at her and being like, well, I was trained by witch so-and-so, who was trained by witch so-and-so. We've been passing down the knowledge for generations of witches. And Diamanda's just like, so nobody's learned anything new. This is the problem with this type of, like, ideology of like, oh, we're always going to do it this way. You need to open up your minds. Like, new blood is there for a reason. Like, all the spooks are supposed to, like, bring something new and then make the thing better. 13 books! And this has not happened! And Jenny is like, maybe we need to do things differently. And Tom is like, yeah, maybe we do, actually. That's yeah, I never thought of that. Like, girl power. And I thought this was really interesting, that we were going to get, like, a completely different approach to a Spook's apprenticeship. But we don't. Like, they have this conversation, they come to this conclusion, and then Jenny's training kind of fizzles out. So the seventh daughter of seventh daughter powers are that she has complete empathy, so she can read other people's emotions. She can also make herself invisible. Remember this for later. One of the things that I actually did like about this book, and the whole series actually, is that we get multiple points of view. It's not just Tom's point of view, which was the entire, almost the entire Wardestone Chronicles were told from Tom's point of view, but here we get, when Jenny becomes an apprentice, she gets her own diary and becomes a narrator in her own right. She talks about how she was also abused by her adoptive father and the weird way in which she stopped it from happening by threatening him. Like, there is a lot of abuse towards women in this series, and I'll get back to it because it's disturbing. Also, Jenny becoming Tom's apprentice was foretold at the end of the Wardestone Chronicles when he had a vision of the house at Chippenden being completely burnt out and the wall, like the apprentice room's wall where they all wrote their names down underneath his name was the name Jenny. So her being an apprentice was foretold. I don't know what the thing about the house being burnt out was about, because it doesn't burn down at any point, so I'm not sure why that was included. Then Grimalkin turns up, and Grimalkin was probably the only character from the Wardestone Chronicles that I actually liked, because she has a few working brain cells, unlike most of the other characters. And she has been doing a lot of research about the Kobolos and their armies and their way of life and their magic and how they intend to take over the world and slaughter all the men and reduce all the women and children into slavery. And she is determined to not let this happen. So she recruits Tom and Jenny to help her fight this foe. This starts off with her setting off two monsters that are like Kobolos creatures that turn out to be giant burrowing land squid type things. She sets two off while trying to study them. Tom and Jenny have to help her destroy them, and then she makes them all travel to what would be Poland in order to defeat a Kobolos warrior to establish Tom as the leader of the human army that is going to march against the Kobolos. Okay, that's about half of this book, and it is boring AF, because all the way through the journey, Grimalkin is just telling them what's what. It's all tell and no show, and I hate that. I hate that in books. I really would have liked to see Grimalkin's research. Like, we get her notes, the stuff that she, like, is observing and writing down, and the research that she's done in her notes, but I really would have loved to see her actually doing it in real time. So when I read the first book, I kind of assumed, okay, Grimalkin doesn't get a POV because it's only about the Spook's POV, but in the third book she gets her own POV. So why is most of this book just Grimalkin telling them what's going on and telling them what's happening? Like, thank God she's there. Because Tom and Jenny are like, we don't know what's happening. And Tom doesn't really care either. Tom is the type of character who doesn't really understand the concept of a threat that might develop into something bigger in the future, even though he has had to deal with something like this in the Wardestone Chronicles, which, again, that whole campaign was sort of spearheaded by Grimalkin as well. Why isn't the story told from her point of view? She's way more interesting. Jenny just spends her time complaining about everything and moping and whining because that's the type of character she is. Because God forbid that her and Tom would actually have to think about anything and do any kind of research. It's all up to Grimalkin. So we have a male character falling back on the hard work of a woman who isn't going to get the glory for any of it. Way to go! And Jenny just whining about Grimalkin being a witch. Yeah. I also want to point out that Tom is not under Grimalkin's spell in any way. Like, he is not forced to do this. She's not making him do this. He goes along with her willingly. She didn't drag him there against his will. But he is complaining a lot about how she is manipulating him. So just stop letting her manipulate you, Tom. Like, you have a choice in this. Grimalkin trains Tom to be able to defeat the Kobolos warrior, and which he does, but he also gets killed. So I spent every single book, all 13 books in the Wardestone Chronicles, thinking that John Gregory was gonna die at the end, and he eventually dies at the end of book 13. And in this series, Tom dies at the end of the first book, which wasn't on my bingo card. That was a bit of a surprise, I'm gonna be honest. That was a bit of a surprise to me. It also would have been nice if Jenny could have participated a bit more, or had, like, her training been more there. Out of the 3 books in this trilogy, this is definitely the worst one. So that was The Spook, A New Darkness by Joseph Delaney. The next book is called The Dark Army. It starts off with Jenny whining. And then Tom gets resurrected by what appears to be an angel. And now the people of the North consider him to be their saviour, who is going to lead their army to defeat the Kobolos army, which is what was going to happen if he defeated the Kobolos warrior anyway. So I'm not entirely sure why, like, he needed to die to make this happen.
I'm trying to understand you. I'm trying.
But sure. Tom's still mad at Grimalkin because she was trying to manipulate him by not divulging all of her plans for, like, why they need to go to Poland in the first place. But, like, also, you still went along willingly. Like, I don't get why Tom is so pissed with her at this point. Then he decides to do a bit more training with Jenny by sending her into the attics of the castle where the Lord lives and getting her to send the ghosts off towards the light. He ends up putting her in this room with what is not a ghost but a demon. Like, he doesn't go into the room first to check what's actually in there or how dangerous these ghosts are. He just sends her in. And then they wonder why so many Spook apprentices die. Like, if this is how you're gonna be, like, training them, just throwing them in at the deep end to see what happens. Okay, I'm back again. Have to film this at a different time because my boyfriend came home and I was hungry. So the thing in this attic, in this castle, turns out to be a gateway into hell where the Kobolos god lives. They speak to the ghost of a Kobolos mage who reveals to them that he created this monster. So the Kobolos society decided at one point to slaughter all their females. So Kobolos are only male. So they decided to do away with all the females of their species because they've been watching too much Andrew Tate. And then turned around and were like, oh shit, how do we have babies? So they enslave women, human women, and do some kind of magic jiggery-pokery in order to get them to have their offspring. But the offspring are always male. And the mage they speak to reveals to them that he was against this practice, and one of the reasons he wanted to bring back a new god was to abolish this practice and bring female Kobolos back. But he was hijacked and murdered, and the fundamentalist Kobolos mages, magi, magical guys,
Dave the magical cheese wizard,
decided to turn the new god into a god of war. As I understand it, I'm not entirely clear, but there are two afterlives. So there is like the light and there is the darkness. So the light is where the spooks go, even though they do terrible things. And then the darkness is where the witches go and all the dark creatures go. And that's where their gods live. But gods like Pan, who is the god of life, which you would think is a good thing, is actually a god of darkness. So I don't entirely understand how the lore of this works, but like it's not like heaven or hell. It's not like you get to go to the light if you're a good person, because the spooks do really horrible things, but they get to go to heaven, and even the witches that do good things get to go, they still have to go to darkness. So I don't know, it's kind of arbitrary. It's a very system where even something as bog standard and basic as just all of life qualifies as something dark. I don't know. So after this, Tom Ward is like, okay, this is all well and good, but I'm going home. But Grimalkin is bent on having her war, so she forces Tom to stay by literally kidnapping Jenny. So she kidnaps Jenny, sends her away with a scouting party to a tower she's hoping to capture with the human army. So Tom, this is the moment when you can say that you are being manipulated. The scouting party turns out to be a complete disaster. They all get slaughtered, except for Jenny. So here's the thing. This would have been a perfect opportunity to put Jenny's skills to use. She can make herself invisible. Perfect for sneaking up and gathering information without being seen. Literally nobody would see her. And having her empathy skills would mean that she would be able to understand the emotions of those that she was spying on. This would have been such a great thing to do, but that is not what happens. Jenny just ends up alone in a ditch, crying, waiting for Tom to come rescue her. And she sees a bunch of Kobolos coming across from her with a group of women who are all in chains, who are all being beaten and abused. And this is the thing that really annoys me about Joseph Delaney's writing, especially when it comes to this, oh, abusing women is a bad thing. He seems to be making a conscious effort in these books to be like, hey, I'm not misogynistic. Look, one of my actual positive protagonists is a girl, And, abusing women bad. The problem I have with this is there is no alternative. So he is showing, okay, abusing women is not okay. But there is no case of women being treated right in this book. Like, Tom is a dick towards Jenny. He doesn't really listen to her. He doesn't really care. He looks down on her. Grimalkin is strong and independent, but she's a fanatic. She also has no purpose in life, and there is nothing that makes her happy aside from the child that was taken from her by the devil. Because obviously women can't possibly be happy or have a purpose in life if they don't have children. Tom's mum was unhappy in her marriage. She married Tom's dad out of necessity. Meg, a Lamia witch who was in a relationship with John Gregory, was abused by him. Tom was constantly being warned against women by John Gregory, who told him to be wary of all women, especially those with pointy shoes. So women are untrustworthy. All the witches are women, and they all do terrible things. And here's the thing. The Pendle witches were not all women. If you read the Pendle witch trials, you will know, and Joseph Delaney had to have known this, that the witches at Pendle were not all women. I live in a hot spot. Like, I live in a part of the world where there was a huge witch hunt and witch trials that took place here. Over 200 people got arrested, including a man who allegedly flew a broomstick from the church up the road down to the end of my street. A man. There is this kind of mythology about how the early Renaissance was about, destroying women because accusing them of witchcraft. But that isn't true. They weren't all women. There were a lot of men also who got arrested. And Joseph Delaney knew this. So the fact that he is to portray all of these witches who do terrible, terrible things as women is a choice. This is second grade YA. You have to be really careful when writing about stuff like this. So Tom and Grimalkin and the rest of the army catch up to Jenny, and they manage to take the tower. There's like a battle. Tom gets captured. He gets the Starblade. Alice turns up. And this is where, again, Tom just behaves like a total dick towards Alice. He is very jealous of the mage that she ran away with at the end of the Wardestone Chronicles, and he is very resentful towards Alice. So I would have hoped that there be some kind of character development, that he understands at some point that Alice should be allowed to make decisions for herself, that he shouldn't be resentful of her, that he should just accept that this is the way the world works, that you should just respect other people's choices. But that doesn't happen. He remains resentful and he remains jealous. We learned that Alice ran away with the mage because apparently she pleaded with him to save Tom's life, even though Tom almost killed the mage at the end of the Wardestone Chronicles, but Alice begged him not to, so he didn't. So Tom could have killed the mage. So I'm not entirely sure why she was pleading for him for Tom's life, but sure. So she went off with him because she needed his power to fight the Kobolos army. Why she couldn't tell Tom about this is up for debate, because I said she was a bitch at the end of the last book for running off with the mage and being really snobby towards Tom and being like, oh yeah, you just don't understand. Why couldn't he understand? I mean, she's half right, because Grimalkin comes up and says there is this great danger that we need to fight against. We need to join our forces to go and raise an army to fight this foe. And Tom's like, I miss my cheese. So maybe Alice was half right, but still, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this. I understand why all the people in the comment section were telling me not to say that Alice was a bitch and read this series, but I still think she's a bit of a bitch. I still don't entirely understand what she did. The only difference now is I think Tom is even worse. And this would have been the perfect moment for Tom to actually have a valid reason to be angry at Grimalkin for literally abducting Jenny, but he just lets it go. So there's a big battle where Alice does her thing of like ripping the earth apart to like engulf part of the enemy's army. They fight one of the mages, and then they actually go home. So Tom, Alice with Jenny. Alice doesn't like Jenny. Alice is jealous of Jenny. I don't know why, but she is. Because again, women can't possibly be friends with each other or have any kind of kindness. They gotta be rivals. I want to pull my hair out with frustration. Jenny's still moaning and complaining until she gets separated from Tom and Alice and picked up by Slitter. I was really hoping that we were going to get to see Slitter again because his character was really interesting. So it turns out that the ghost Kobolos mage got in touch with other Kobolos who were also against the fundamentalist Kobolos mages in order to get them to make an allegiance with Tom. So Slitter picks up Jenny, and then Tom and Alice arrive, and he's like, I'm on your side. But then we never see him again. It would have been so great to have like the renegade Kobolos mages joining their forces with Tom and Alice and Jenny, but they don't do that. So what was the point of telling us that there was a bunch of mages who were willing to help? Joseph Delaney has a thing for redundant information. He just does. I want to talk about the chauvinism, which is another point that I really don't like about Delaney's writing. And that is that, oh, everything is better in the UK. Like, everything is better. And nothing can even come close or be mildly interesting in a foreign country, and everything is inferior. And that drives me up the wall. And this was the worst offender for this was the book, whichever one it was, where they go to Greece. And when they get there, there are Greek spooks. And this would have been a perfect moment to be like, okay, let them talk to each other, share information, let them find out more about the evil creatures that live in Greece and how they deal with them. And, you know, what knowledge can be shared and what new things could the spooks from the UK learn from the spooks in Greece, because there's always things to learn from other cultures. Nothing is better or worse, things are different. And to know how to learn and broaden your horizons is such a blessing. Like, if you can do that, if you can travel, if you can go and learn from other cultures, that is such an amazing thing to do. Here they are just looking down their noses on them. The Greek spooks all get killed in the first, like, battle scene. They are just there for decoration. They're just there to be like, oh look, they're no good, but we're the British spooks. We're so much better. And this is why they don't learn anything or do anything differently throughout all of these books, because, well, we just do it the right way right from the start, because we know everything, because we're British. And as somebody, like, I know I sound stupidly British, but I'm actually French, I live in France. But as somebody who's grown up with both cultures, I am here to tell you that there are great things in the UK that I love and that I miss. There are also really bad things that I don't like about it. And it's the same for France. There's really great things here that I love. There's also things that I don't love. Things are different. Like, they're not better or worse. They're just different. And to not be able to acknowledge that your culture has its good points, but it also has its bad ones as well. And maybe there's another culture that can help you get over them. And the thing that comes up in this one is, like, I get Jenny always complaining that it's cold and it's miserable and blah and blah. It's like, can't you learn to just appreciate a country that is different from yours? Like, I live in a part of the world where it barely ever snows. There is no snow here. And I went to Bavaria when I was like 18 years old, and it was middle of winter. It had been snowing for 2 months. There was over 1 meter of snow on the ground. And it just stayed there. Like here when it snows, it's like we have snow, that much snow for about a day, and then it all melts. But there was like actual frozen, compact snow. That it was in the trees, it was on the ground, it was on the houses, it was everywhere. And I loved it. It's so beautiful. It makes for an amazing landscape. But Jane's like, oh, I'm cold. And then there's the food. Tom is whining about the cheese. Because the cheese back home is so much better. Why? Why is that necessary? Why can't we just learn to, I don't know, try something different and appreciate something different? Like, I don't know. I don't understand this at all. It's, again, something that I find particularly negative for young readers. Like, this is not what you should be teaching young people. You should be teaching them to broaden their horizons and learn that even a landscape that is so different with different food and a different culture can also be a wonderful thing. A recent series that does this really well is the Emily Wilde series, which I strongly recommend because this really shows how beautiful and amazing different cultures are. So these books are specifically about fairies, but read these. So when Tom gets back home, he learns that the county has been afflicted with the god of winter, who is just randomly attacking civilians for some reason. He's just like popping up in places and freezing people, and that's it. Okay. So Tom is like, okay, this is the god of winter, we need to go and fight it. Finally kicks himself into gear and brings all of his skills together to go and fight this monster. Grimalkin's there as well, and so is Meg, the like John Gregory's old companion, and she's so this is again like when I say this book is like makes a point of being like abusing women bad on one side, but then giving us stuff like this. Like Meg was abused by John Gregory, and she returned to Greece, to her home country, to be with her sister after Showdown, and now she's come back because her sister's dead and she can't live without John Gregory. She didn't know that he died, so she came back to find him. She came back to find her abuser. Because as we have learnt from the other women in these books, they can't possibly have a reason for living without their child or without their partner, regardless of how he treated them. As somebody who is a domestic abuse survivor, this type of stuff really grinds my gears. So they have a fight with the god of winter in which Pan gets involved, and we learn also that Alice is getting her powers from the god Pan, and apparently she's the only witch who does this, so she's the only witch of life or nature or whatever. And then it's Grimalkin's turn to die at the end of this book, along with Meg. This is another complaint I have about this stuff, is characters get introduced just to kill them off. There was literally no reason for Meg to be there. Like, you didn't have to change a lot of things about that battle scene to get rid of her. So, yeah, she just, like, pops up to get killed off. Fun.
It's kind of depressing because everybody dies.
So this book wasn't quite as bad as the first one. There is more show than tell. There is also a lot more action, a lot more stuff happens, but there is some seriously stuff, especially Tom's behaviour towards Alice. He is now officially a possessive, jealous piece of shit. So the last book in this trilogy is Spook's Dark Assassin, and this is the book where we get Grimalkin's point of view, and also begs the question, why didn't we get it in the first book? So Grimalkin is now in the Dark Witch's afterlife. So we know from all the previous books that witches don't stay dead. They become animated corpses. But Grimalkin has to go through all of this trial and find 2 gods that are willing to bring her back to life, or like bring her back to Earth to be undead. So she finds her old apprentice Thorn, and they go to the god Pan, god of life. So yeah, if there's somebody who's going to bring them back, it's probably him. I still don't understand why the god of life is a part of darkness. Like, Tom and Jenny encounter Bill Arkwright, who was a spook in one of the earlier novels, who died in Greece. That Greece book is just no. And now he just shows up at the house and is like, hi. Tom is very wary, doesn't think that this is the real Bill Arkwright, and it turns out he's not. He's some kind of mental construct that is there to try and steal the Starblade from Tom, but who is apparently conjured by a Kobolos mage. But I don't understand how this mage would have known about Bill Arkwright and who he was and what he was like, because he died before any of this took place. And even if he had read Tom's mind or looked into the past or something, I just don't understand how he was capable of making such a convincing copy. It's a very, very weird part of the book that I was just very confused by, and it happens twice. So all of this time, Tom is trying to get back to the Witch's Tower to be with Alice, and on the way, Jenny dies.
Why would you do that?
I don't understand why this happened at all, and it has no consequence on the rest of the novel. So once again, we have just a character being killed off because it honestly felt like the author didn't know what to do with her anymore. So like, I don't know what to do with her, I'm just gonna kill her. I'm sorry? What was the point of putting her through her apprentice? What was the point of any of it? Just bewildering. Absolutely bewildering. And I honestly thought that there was going to be, like, that she was going to get resurrected in some way, but she doesn't. Absolutely infuriating. I don't understand. What was the point of Jenny's character at all if it wasn't for her to become the first female spook? Like, what was the point? Tom's still going off on his jealousy fits at Alice because she had to go back and work with the mage in order to fight the Kobolos army. Grimalkin, in the meantime, is transporting herself to Earth into the Kobolos city to try and mess things up for them there, and then she decides to go and kill their god of war, who is feeding power to them to take over the world so that their armies can be stopped. There's a battle with the witches, which Tom takes part in. And so yeah, they win the war against the Kobolos in another very underwhelming and disappointing way. The battle was more compelling than the one at the end of the Wardestone Chronicles, that I will give it that. And this series ends in just the most bizarre way possible, because Tom, after the war, after everything's done, Tom gets jumped by 3 Kobolos who start torturing him, and then he turns into a Lamia witch because his mum was a Lamia witch. So we knew that he had kind of different powers, like he could affect the course of time. I think in the first or the second book he does this, but he kind of only ever does it a few times. It's not a power that he particularly uses a lot. It's just we're randomly told that he has this power and that's it. We know that it's because of his mum, but like he is a full-blown Lamia witch, so maybe I was a bit harsh with Joseph Delaney when I accused him of saying that all the witches were women. There's one male. Why have no other male Lamia witches ever happened? Like, is it because he's the seventh son of a seventh son? Like, what's that? I don't know what this is about.
I'm trying to understand you.
So he goes back to Chippenden and Alice is there, and yeah, he doesn't learn not to be jealous and possessive. She doesn't learn to be not a bitch. The goblin cat's still there. I really wish that this book had ended with Tom with Alice and having, I don't know, Jenny training in the garden. Something positive. Also, what was the vision about, like, Chippenden House being burnt out? Like, that never happens. So it was like that's supposed to be the vision of what would happen if they lost the war or something? As I said before, just get used to not getting answers to shit. Like, it's just... So I always said I had a love-hate relationship with Joseph Delaney's writing. It's definitely more on the hate side with this trilogy. There's a reason it's taken me this long, okay? I want to start with the things that I actually like about Joseph Delaney's series and why I read it so much was because this is the only fantasy series I know of that takes place in the part of the UK where I was born and makes use of local folklore. And I find that really interesting. The village I was born in, which is called Todmorden, even features in one of the stories. And I still have family who live in this area. So it is really, really interesting to me to see local folklore and how it gets worked into this fantasy series. What I don't like is literally everything else. I want to start off by talking about Alice. So Alice was actually abused by the mage she took off with. So why the hell Grimalkin told Tom that they were desperately in love and they were just, she was in love with him and it was love at first sight and they left and ran off together. I don't know why she said that to deliberate, like, why did nobody just tell Tom the f***ing truth that she had to go off and save his life and there was a Kobolos army in that? Like, I don't know. I don't really get this weird lying. Either that or everybody thinks Tom is really dumb, which he kind of is. So maybe it can be forgiven. I don't know. This does, however, make her less of a bitch than I previously said. But she's still a bitch because the way she just behaves towards Jenny. There is literally no need for that. Tom is even worse than she is because he is a jealous, possessive who doesn't have any kind of character development. He doesn't learn that this is not okay. He's just worse now. Because far be it from anyone to try and teach young boys to respect girls in any way, shape or form, which just comes back to the misogyny. And they even make a point in this book when Tom meets Alice again and he remembers what John Gregory told him about being wary of women, especially ones who wear pointy shorts, and he's like, oh yeah, that was really good advice. Yeah, because women are completely untrustworthy, all of them. I hate it. I hate it. Yeah, the Kobolos treat women like cattle, and that's wrong. The alternative is to drug them so that they remain docile. So overall, this series was very unsatisfactory to me. I wish we'd have had more of Grimalkin's research and perspective in the first book. I wish that we'd have had more of Slitter and more of the benevolent Kobolos to help fight the war on the side of the good guys. But no, the Kobolos mage from the very beginning apparently was a renegade, but he did terrible things and killed women because he couldn't be bothered to learn the local culture. So yeah, he wasn't very willing to team up. So yeah, that's all I can think of right now. Please don't ask me to read Aberrations or Brother Wolf, even though I probably will out of morbid curiosity. That's all for this video. Bye bye!